on Tuesday, May 19th, and it is 7 o'clock at 400 Center Road. I'm calling the meeting to order, and can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Any sign of a hand will be fine, thank you. And are there any changes, amendments, add-ons? I have two. If you want me to go to you after I finish my two, please put your hand up. Under new business 10, let's call it item number A, is Canada Day. And number B, we will call Brunswick. And those are the only changes, additions that I have. I'll ask, yes, Fred?
I've got a couple. I don't know if they're appropriate for the meeting or not. But the first one is, I'd like to raise the issue of the clock door code. I don't know if staff's finished dealing with that or if it's still in play.
It's going to be addressed. It's being worked on.
Oh, so we don't need to discuss it?
I don't think so.
Okay. Another one is, I've been getting email about rubbish at Deeks Creek, people concerned about dumping there, and the fire risk to Lions Bay. Is that something that's hit the radar, or do we need to talk about it?
Yeah, we got a note from the fire chief, and Robert contacted, for starters, contacted the SLRD's emergency coordinator. So we'll see where that goes, because it's in their territory. We'll see that. And also, I think Robert also sent a note to fisheries.
Ah, perfect. Okay, then I don't see the need to discuss it if you got it in hand.
I also, Peter sent a note to Wildfire, and they sent it on to Report of Poacher and Pollution as well.
Okay.
All right, any other changes, additions? Okay, there being none, can I have a motion to accept the agenda as amended? Thank you. A seconder, one more hand, gone. Thank you. Public participation, we can do 2 minutes, and Leslie, if you want to participate, you can.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. My participation was, thank you for being here tonight. And mine was some comments around parking, which I've been a resident of the village for about 23 years. And I run a consulting company actually that does sort of people and behavior management. And I was on the parking committee in 2016 under our previous mayor. And at the time, you know, there was a lot going on in the village. Housing prices were soaring. There was a lot more renovations happening in the village. So, you know, people were becoming aware of our lovely little enclaves. And somebody put it to me once that we're becoming known as BC's Santa Barbara. So our recreational spaces and, you know, we're just becoming part of the social media lexicon, if you will. You know, if you were into sea sports or mountain sports, this was the place to be. And so let's fast forward a little bit. You know, Lions Bay had lots of parking, no parking fees, and really no visitor management, really. Enforcement was kind of, you know, pretty spotty. And we needed paid parking here. I did the survey that actually 53% of the village did not want paid parking. And last week, I actually sort of put out this diatribe out on Facebook, and, you know, 100 people watched it, listened to it, and it was a decently written one, but there was a lot of commentary back that there were many people, part of the Lions Bay neighbors community, which is 182 people on that. Many people said they were ones who voted no on the public parking, and then now wish they had. And so, you know, fast forward again to trying to, you know, you've got COVID, you've got fire season, and you've got, you know, public that doesn't like to mind our boundaries. And our enforcement is spotty. And I'm somebody who would like to see a couple more enforcement officers for a couple of months that ticket and tell everybody, and a social media campaign that says, we'd love you to come and enjoy us, but we ticket and tow. As a single mom, I was towed from Granville Street once at 2 minutes after 3, and I never did it again. So I think, unfortunately, towing is something that we're gonna have to do, and I think we just need to get a little more serious about managing our community. I'll yield my time.
Thank you.
I certainly open a conversation on another time about this, but I just think we do need to have a bit more of a sort of a community management or people management and safety plan, and parking is something we can at least manage it with.
Okay, thank you very much, Leslie. Councillors, any
Okay.
questions?
I have one. Leslie, you said there, and I think I quoted you as just saying there were several people who had voted no on public parking and then changed their minds.
Yes.
From reading what you'd written in some of those comments, I'm not sure that's a good description, and I think you might have meant something slightly different. Could you just expand on that?
Sure. What I meant was in the survey that I had done back in 2016, as imperfect as it was, it did capture a lot of comments. There were many people who did not want public parking in the village because they believed we should be sort of a welcoming community and that we didn't think public parking, paid parking was necessary. And on this Facebook, rather long Facebook posting I did, there were 3 or 4 or 5 people who had said, I was one who voted not to have paid parking and was wrong, that paid parking was one of our only ways of being able to manage the community, the number of people coming in and out of the community. That's what I meant.
Thank you very much, Leslie.
Yeah, you got it.
Councillor Abbott, are you good? Are you still hand up? Thank you.
No.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Leslie, thank you very much for your participation, and we whistle through a bunch of this, and parking and bylaw enforcement should be up pretty quickly, and you can listen in. Okay, thank you very much again. So here we are on the review and approval of minutes of the prior meeting, May 5th. It's on page 7 in your package. I could have a motion that the minutes be approved as approved, and then we'll go to discussion for any amendments. Thank you. Seconder, good, thank you. Any discussion, any changes, amendments on the minutes?
I have one or a couple points.
Okay, Councillor Cunliffe, you're first up.
Page 12 of 190, under Councillor kind of noted for reasons. The original from the infrastructure committee was for a hydrology project, and I also did state for the house SCADA equipment and the hope of improved cell service. And that as well, I did say that I believe that the project had morphed from something that was appropriately sized, that was actually cited to be potentially at the fire hall. It had somehow morphed from something that size to 60 meters. So there was a disconnect for me on at what point that had taken such a drastic change. And that would be it.
Thank you very much. And Carla's been typing furiously, so thank you very much. Councillor
Thank you,
Abbott?
Carla.
Councillor Abbott?
Councillor Balmer had his hand up as well, but sure. Mine is reparking bylaw enforcement, page 9. 5, 6 bullets down, I guess. What do we mean by staff on for weekend? Do we mean the bylaw officers are working the next weekend? Or were we talking about staff? There was a lot of discussion. I'm not sure if this bullet captures anything very definitively, unless I'm misunderstanding, maybe someone else clarify what we meant by that.
CAO, you're on mute.
Sorry, you're talking about the bullet that says staff on for the weekend?
Yeah.
That just meant bylaw enforcement staff would be on for the week.
Okay,
Okay,
enough. Well, can we just change it to bylaw enforcement? The term staff kind of, in our context, often means other things.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Councillor Barmeyer?
Yeah, I just wanted to add under council reports, a quick update on the grant application for the EV fast charger. Just to give council, keep council abreast of what's happening.
I will, thank you.
That's 7C1, I guess,
Thank
just
you.
Barmeyer, Council Barmeyer.
Okay, thank you. No changes on the agenda, Councillor Barmeyer? Or, sorry, on the minutes?
Oh, pardon me, sorry, that's, I got confused. I thought we were going over the agenda. Pardon me, no change to the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a minor change, and I'll give it to Carla. It's on page 12 of 190. And just to go with it, it's the one that starts, Mayor McLaughlin provided a statement in favor of the cell tower, noting that the benefits outweigh the negatives, period. He recognized the height of the proposed towers was a negative. And I've got one other minor spelling thing, which I'll give to Carla. Other than that, any other changes, corrections? There being none, all in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay, please. Thank you, the ayes have it, thank you. Any business arising from the minutes? I had nothing. Nothing that we're not going to talk about today, anyhow. There being none, we're moving on to unfinished business. I'll just quickly nip through this. Item number 104 is ongoing. Number 127, CAO, this is the electronic building submission.
yeah, nothing, no, nothing to report about on that topic.
Okay, and item number 128, which is the wood fiber stuff, that's in correspondence, so we'll get to that then. And for the balance of the items 129 to 139, those are all done, and so they're struck. And that'll be the end of that, so which brings us to the reports and to staff and CAO. This is the request for decision.
Sorry, Ron, I did raise my hand, but I guess you
Sorry,
can be looking lots of places.
I have to train my eyes to look through different ways.
Items 130 down to 139, I guess, and likewise. Can council be copied on these responses? Because I didn't get copied on any of those. These were generally comments that were sent to council.
I'm pretty
By the mayor, but we didn't get copied to us.
I tell you what, I'm pretty sure I did, but as the evening goes on, I will send them to you as well. If that's fine with you, Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, that's fine. I know I did look for the cell tower
It would-
ones. I didn't look at
it-
all of them. I didn't see any copies.
It would be odd if I didn't. There we go. Okay, thank you very much.
No rush to do that, whatever. No rush.
So that's
Thanks.
to Carl, the two former mayors. Okay, done. I'll do that while we're going on. Okay, item 7A and CAO, request for decision parking and bylaw enforcement, and it starts on page 21. And the staff recommendation is that council provide direction on the options at page 2 of the parking and bylaw enforcement report to council. It was presented today at the regular council meetings. CAO, do you have the ball?
Okay, so basically, I have provided some information to the community with respect to parking and enforcement issues over the last couple of weeks in the village update. And I hope that has clarified a few things in terms of some of the nuances as to what's open, what's not, what we have control over, what we don't, and where things are at. In terms of some of the recent correspondence that was alluded in part to by Leslie Nolan, there has been a number of voices suggesting that people are not respecting our penalties or our willingness to tow. And so I had a quick look at our schedule of penalties for all of our bylaws. They're attached a Schedule A to this report. The ones that we primarily deal with in terms of the parking enforcement are in the traffic and parking bylaw. So I had, just one sec here. Thought I had that open.
Do you know Evo Menk? Evo Menk?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there's sort of the ones that are key to bylaw enforcement officers. The basis upon which they issue most tickets is under a provision regarding parking contrary to signage. So it could be like a no parking sign, or it could be a meter that's expired, for instance. It could also be a cul-de-sac, no parking, but there's another special provision for that one that's a little more onerous. And then the other one that is used the most is the one that's parking contrary to requiring a permit, whether it's a resident parking permit or a contractor's parking permit or a guest parking permit. Those are, sorry, I had it in front of me here, but basically, I think if I remember correctly, those are set at 65 and then 55 for a early payment discount, and then 80 for a late payment penalty. Sorry, don't quote me on that, but it's roughly that. You know, back when most of these were implemented, there was a review of neighboring jurisdictions in terms of setting comparable rates. That is reviewed from time to time. Haven't done it for a little while. So that is a step that could be taken in terms of next steps. Or council could look at it, and I noted that there was a suggestion in Ms. Nolan's letter as to particular rates. But for simplification, you know, council could look at increasing to something like $100 for contrary to parking contrary to permit required, with an early payment discount of 75 and a late payment discount of 125. But the face value of the ticket would be $100, and that would be the same for parking contrary to a traffic device, i.e. a no parking sign, as opposed to a permit required sign. So that's one way you could go, essentially settling on an increase this evening to send a message based on a perception that people don't think that we have very steep parking penalties. I don't know how accurate that perception is, or how widespread it is, but there certainly is a fair bit of information on social media suggesting that's the case. There's also some anecdotal information from staff members and others indicating that people have been parking in a place where, you know, they're warned that they might get ticketed and towed, and they make a comment like, "I'll take my chances." So that does suggest that the attitude is one which is perhaps getting circulated. I'm not on social media myself, so I don't really know how widespread that is. In terms of towing, our towing policy is actually quite varied and provides for towing in most circumstances. It's really been a case of the means that we've employed to enforce through towing. It's a labor-intensive activity. It's a harsh penalty, but in terms of taking up by law enforcement officers' time, you know, they're there contacting the towing company. They often need to be present when the towing company arrives. You know, if they go away and do something while waiting for the towing company and then come back, sometimes the vehicle is gone, which is something that happened on the weekend down in Calvin Road. So it is something that, you know, you have to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, because if the ticket is successfully challenged, then the towing charge is going to get set aside and thrown back on us as well. So we want to make sure that we're only doing it where we're absolutely certain that the ticket's going to stand up. The signage has got to be very supportive, and the bylaw officers know and do take quite a few pictures, but there are a few areas where we don't have the ability to tow, and that of course is Brunswick Beach interchange, as well as the Kelvin Grove interchange berm, which doesn't have signage on it and regularly has cars parked on it. So I have reached out to Ministry of Transportation, and with the same request that we made at Kelvin Grove, and we'll wait and see what comes back. But I do note that you know, when we have parking lots that are closed, our own parking lots that are closed, and we sign everything such that there's nowhere to park, we're pushing people into other neighborhoods that historically don't have or haven't had parking issues, like Upper Kelvin Grove. Lots of vehicles reported parking up that street now, which has never had no parking or permit required signage because it was never necessary. So I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that having our parking lots closed is causing street parking issues, and one option is to consider reopening those parking lots in due course and installing the meters, and whether it's all 3 locations for those parking lots and meters, or just some of them. I would suggest that the strongest case for reopening would be at Lions Bay Beach Park and at the Sunset Trailhead. People are going to come and use the Sunset Trailhead and hike the Lions, whether we like it or not. And I think it would be best to try and put as many people parking in that parking lot and paying us money to do so, keeping less vehicles on the streets down below. And I think we need to consider a timeline for reopening the beach park with procedures that will keep, to the best of our ability, everyone in compliance with public health directives. We're working on those kinds of procedural matters and criteria that we'll need to consider in order to do that. But I do note as well that if council gives the go-ahead to open those 2 lots and put the meters back, we need about 30 days before the parking company can deliver those meters all programmed and ready to go. So that would be, you know, mid to late June in any event. As far as Kelvin Grove Beach Park is concerned, in that parking lot, there's a case to be made for keeping it closed because the park itself is not accessible with our construction at the wastewater treatment plant replacement project. It would be best to keep people out of that location this summer till that project is completed, and certainly allowing for parking is probably going to only result, or, you know, for the most part, or to a significant degree, people parking there to walk down the CN tracks to the cliff jumping area. So notwithstanding our efforts to work with the CN police, I think that keeping that parking lot closed is probably has benefit in terms of trying to deter that to the best extent we can, while recognizing that it's going to cause issues up the road. And if we can get compliance or assistance from Modi, then we could perhaps sign the berm up there and tow vehicles, or have them tow vehicles. We can't do it. And we could look at posting further no parking or permit required signage up Kelvin roadway, if that's the direction that we need to go. In the interim, staff, BEO staff were directed to watch for instances where towing was something that would be appropriate over the past weekend. And as I mentioned, one was going to happen and then drove away before the tow truck arrived. But the direction was to tow anybody less than the requisite amount, requisite distance for fire hydrants and stop signs. That's more or less a safety thing. I would say that we could ramp it up to where people are parking right in front of no parking signage, or immediately adjacent to permit required signage, if that's the direction the council wants to go. Recognizing that it is going to eat up by law enforcement officer time, and they're not going to be able to get to as many places as a result. So it's kind of a fine line that we're trying to walk, and trying to use our resources as effectively and as efficiently as we possibly can. That's about it. I think in terms of preferred options, I think the increasing the penalties is fine, and also the towing intensity where it's safety related or egregious. And in terms of Calvin Road parking, I've given you my thoughts on the parking lots at all three locations, and the financial considerations are laid out there as well.
Thank you very much, CAO. I've got people on with their hands up. I would ask for the council members, we'd like to get to a decision on this one, and I think everybody does understand the issue, so let's go fairly quickly through this. I'm not going to stymie any discussion, but let's kind of get to the decision piece of it and not state what the obvious and what everybody knows is the situation is. Well, we have the full house on everybody. So, okay. So I've got 4 on the board already, so we'll be going in this order. Councillor Abbott, Councillor Bain, Councillor Cunliffe, Councillor Barmeyer. Councillor Abbott, you're up first.
Thank you. Yes, we're going to try to talk about all these, each try to talk about them all at once, and then kind of circle back. We're not going to try to talk about penalties, all of us, towing, all of us. Is that how we would like to manage it? I mean, because I've obviously we've all got a fair amount of comments. Do you want to do them one at a time?
Let's split it. Councillor Abbott, you're correct. If there's any general questions for the CAO, please ask. And let's go with option number 1, which is penalties and/or towing. So let's focus on that first.
Okay, and we'll do the opening things later. Okay, fair enough. Starting with penalties, I had a look at the schedule, and it is $65 for the original parking. And I relatively recently, well, before the COVID thing happened, I got a ticket for punching the wrong key on the meter in downtown. I paid 14 cents more to park for 3 hours than I normally paid for the whole day. The ticket was $130. So that kind of resonated with me as why don't we just double our fines? Because that seems to be what you get in a bigger city as the most minor infraction of all. I literally paid 14 cents more than I pay every other day, and the fine was $130. So my thought was, all these items to start with park in convention or park on or to all of those ones, the $65 ones, double them, and then the more egregious ones, hydrant, double those. That would be my recommendation, definitely steeper fines. I've been aware of the social media, and I do think there's situations where people could, park for, and by the way, nothing happens unless they park for more than 3 days. They could get multiple fines, but it's probably cheaper than paying the parking meter in some cases. So I would certainly vote for increasing the fines.
Okay, I think, Councillor Abbott, we've got the fine thing, let's go to the towing.
Okay, as to the towing, so I think most of you are aware that I am one of those people that anecdotally told some people that were going to the beach, don't park, you're going to get towed, and the words they used were, they smiled at me knowingly that I smiled and said, yeah, yes, we're going to roll the dice, kept walking. It was last weekend, so they probably got towed. Probably a bad decision. I think we should tow where we can. On the towing policy, it's a little, I think there needs to be a means to tow people that are serial offenders. So currently the way it reads, the way I understood it is, I haven't quite got it, I'll just do it from the top of my head. If you parked as a resident with the wrong sticker and you're there for more than 72 hours, you could get towed. If you're a visitor, you have to be parked in the same place for more than 72 hours. If you park one day in one place, the next day in a different place, the next day in a different place, you could never get towed. You could continue to violate the parking continuously. That's the way it reads. And I have found the place. Unless the CEO wants to just clear it up. If he doesn't think that's the way it is, that's definitely the way I've read it several times. So I think, and I don't know what sort of any of the modern technology where they just scan the number plate costs. I have no idea. But the bylaw officers probably get to recognize cars anyway. But some ways to tow someone if he continues to just pay the $65 fine, or if he refuses to pay his fines and just parks in a different place. So that's my thoughts on those two. And then, not to state the obvious, we don't want to go back to where we were. We started this whole thing around trying to limit the number of people that came in the village, to restrict gatherings of people around the COVID pandemic. I think that is still a concern for me, even though we're starting to loosen up things. But I think there could be other good reasons for us to want to have more control, more ability to tow and time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Just for clarity, I think we got your penalty piece for the towing, and I think you were referencing it, and so was the CAO. The current towing thing is like near obvious safety issues, hydrants, poles. Are you in favor of it doesn't matter where you're parked? If you've parked in a no parking, you're gone?
No, I'm suggesting that repeat offenders, and I don't know if there are these serial offenders, we're assuming there are, that we have a way to tow them, even if they did move their vehicle. If it did park in a different space every time. Currently the policy says, may tow a vehicle on the third instance, provided the time period. Oh, sorry, that's the resident one. So let me just go down a little bit. I'll find it for you. It says, vehicle parked without a valid permit on a highway for longer than 72 consecutive hours. It has to be 72 consecutive hours. So if you parked in a different place on the same offence 3 days in a row, you wouldn't get towed. And I'm suggesting we change that to try to catch people that just basically don't pay their fines and.
So if I may interrupt here.
Break the bylaw.
If I may interrupt, we'll leave the towing policy to be revised later. So I think if I've got this right then, Councillor Abbott, so if you're ticketed and you're in the wrong spot, doesn't matter whether you're next to a fire hydrant or in a other parking area, towing is towing. Is that correct?
After we've gone through the first warning, the first ticket, etc. I'm just saying if you do it repetitively, then you should get towed. I'm not suggesting you get towed for a first offence.
Good. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bain, you're next up.
Yeah, my concern about the parking right now has to do with the fact that we're in a pandemic situation, which looks like it may be coming to an end. So some of this stuff may not be as relevant. But as far as the parking fines are concerned, when there's been a clear understanding and communication from the provincial health officer to stay home and don't travel unless you absolutely have to, I would want to back that up in our community to say that during a federal or provincial pandemic state of emergency, all our parking fines should double until the end of the state of emergency. And I think that might get people thinking a little bit more. In other words, take the instructions more seriously. As far as towing is concerned, I think we should tow until they realize we're not bluffing, however that matters.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Anything else?
Nope, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe?
I agree with, the doubling of fines, and not just for the pandemic. I think that we aren't in a line. $65 sounds like a deal if you're caught parking where you shouldn't be. So I'm in favor of that, and I'm in favor of towing. If there's clear signage, you're not supposed to be there, tow. I did actually witness 2 young men walk down the tracks to their car that was parked in front of the tracks by the electrical box, picked up the ticket off their windshield and laughed out loud. And then the bylaw officer came up right behind and had a little chat with them. But it's not being taken seriously, so I'm in favor of whatever we have to do.
All right, Councillor Cunliffe, I know you'd gladly open the trunk and take the spike belts out and lend them to different areas of the village, so thank you for holding back.
Pleasure.
There we go, thank you. Councillor Barmayer.
Yeah, I just have a few comments, and I'll try and keep it short. We're a small, desirable community. It's a pretty place to come visit. People like to come here. I think that pressure is only going to go up over time, despite COVID. That's obviously a current sort of amplified situation, but just in general, we are going to become visited more frequently as time goes on. So we do have to have a bit of a punchier response to people that are not respecting our rules. So I'm definitely in favor of fines that sting, and following that up with towing, because generally people don't listen or adjust their behavior until they feel something, and when you show up and your car is gone, that's going to leave an impression. So I feel quite strongly about that. So I support both increased fines and towing on second offenses, or whatever the policy might want to look like, but that's my take.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you put your hand down, Councillor Cunliffe? You still got your hand up anymore, or are we done? Done, thank you. Okay, I'll close off on this one. My number for parking for the violations, which were, and I may not have them all, but it was 413, 10F, G, H, and I, and maybe 12. The number I thought, which kind of resonated with me, was $200, which is very round. And then I guess, as the CAO pointed out, if people don't dispute and not prepay it, early pay it, maybe it's going to get down to 150. That's still a good chunk of change. So I would be in favor of that. I'm in favor of towing as well. I'm very cognizant that if people are towed, and a variety of them are, it leaves unhappy people in our village. But with the TransLink renewing their services, there's a way for people to get out of the village. I may not have had the same view when we were in the non-transit space, but we do have an ability for people to leave. So I also would be in favor of towing. And I'm very cognizant of the main affected area, of great parts of the village. We've got no parking issues to deal with, but a whole bunch of places do. So I think we need to support our villagers here. So I think it's fair to say we are five all in favor of increased penalties and 5 in favor of towing aggressively and not for the most major, but all parking offenses. If that's not the case, please say so. And Councillor Cunliffe, you're first up.
It was actually just a further point to the parking that we did witness get pushed up into Lower Kelvin Grove. I came back into the village and saw 6 cars in a row go from Lower Kelvin Grove into Upper Kelvin Grove, of which they did not come back in by vehicle, it was on foot. So I do think we need to pursue putting permit parking or no parking on Upper Kelvin Grove Way, and that's all.
Okay, call that a side issue, and we'll leave that with the Public Works Manager and the CAO and their work to-do list. Is that fine, Public Works Manager? You're good, thank you.
Sorry, can I interject here for a bit?
Yep.
There's a cost to doing that, and so just in terms of, I'm not sure, Mr. Jaffa, whether that is going to be fitting within our current operational budget for signage, or whether that doesn't. The other thing I want to comment on is that we don't have a means of ticketing second offenders more stridently than first offenders. When people are parked for any length of time, and we suspect they're verging on 72 hours, their tires are chalked, and the bylaw enforcement officer has to come back at the expiry of the 72 hours and see if those chalk lines are still in place. So we don't really, as far as I can tell, and in my experience over the last 4.5 years, have real issues with 72-hour parking. And the issues are people just parking where they shouldn't park. Short-term parkers and parking for the day. It's not a 3-day parking issue, unless that's happening now down by Lions Bay Beach Park, because we don't have parking in the parking lot for people who are going out on their boats. That's the only place I can see that becoming an issue. We don't have a digital automated parking ticket machine. So we don't have a data bank that's readily available to the bylaw enforcement officers to tell whether or not they're ticketing somebody they've ticketed before. So they're not going to remember whether the white Chevy Malibu with the license plate whatever is the same one that they ticketed 3 weeks ago. It's just not going to happen. They're just going to get ticketed for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you are going to increase the fines, then presumably that's going to have the intended message, especially if they get towed as well in the circumstances. So
Okay.
I think that's all I've got.
Thank you very much. Let's move to a conclusion on this. Councillor Abbott, you're next up. Councillor Abbott, here we go.
Yeah, so I was just getting the unmute button. Yeah, I put my hand up when the CEO started talking, kind of may have circled around to where I was going by the time I finished talking. But, so 2 questions that come out of that. One, do we have any idea what a simple scanning machine costs? I mean, this kind of technology's got a lot cheaper over the last few years. It might really not be very cost prohibitive, and it might actually assist them with their job. That's one question. But I was suggesting that not that we can step up the fines because we don't have that in our bylaw. I was suggesting that we simply say if someone is a repeat offender, we can tow it. Now, proving he's a repeat offender, confirming that brings us back to the earlier question. But I would hazard a guess there's some very distinctive vehicles that the bylaw officers get to recognise. And we know fairly easily that, I'm sure there's lots of white Chevy Malibus, but most vehicles have become fairly easily identifiable. And I just think if we can't increase the fine for doing it more than once. And there should be another penalty if you're just going to ignore the fine. I don't know what these people do, how they finally get forced to do it when they get their insurance at the end of the year, whether they just, I don't know, sell what they do, how they finally eventually forced to pay the fine. I'm not quite sure how that mechanism works. But if there are people that, as Councillor Pennell said, that just laugh at the fine, then we need another way to enforce it.
Oh, it's got nothing to do with their insurance. ICBC doesn't enforce our tickets for us or those of any other municipality. That's up to us. If people don't pay or they don't contest the ticket, or if they contest it and lose, ultimately anything that we can't collect is turned over to a collection agency. And so that has its own ramifications in terms of people's credit ratings and having to deal with a collection agency going after them all the time for outstanding parking tickets. It's historically been fairly effective for us. We have historically had pretty good rate of return on collection. And when we made it easy for people to pay by putting the online payment on our website, that increased the compliance in terms of payments. And for those, as I said, who don't pay, they get turned over to the collection agency, and we get a decent amount of money from that as well. I'm not sure what the figures are, but yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, CAO. Councillor Barmeyer?
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification so I can understand. Peter, you're saying we have no means of knowing if someone's got outstanding tickets?
Not unless we, collate. Yeah, but we keep all, that all gets entered into a spreadsheet in the office. So after the fact, we can determine how many were given to a particular vehicle license plate number. Or
so my question, I guess, is if the bylaw officer's out there and he's about to issue a ticket, would he know right then and there if that's a repeat offender, or would that take more work?
not unless it's a unique vehicle as suggested by Councillor Redmond.
Okay, so that becomes difficult then, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And we have looked at the automated ticket machines, and we've got like tons of tickets that we reprinted and revised and redesigned a few years ago. And the ticket machines, when we looked at them, were not much more efficient and didn't provide the cost benefit results that we thought were worth it. So we didn't go that route.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Nope. Okay. Public Works Manager, you have a comment?
Yeah, to Peter's comment about the cost, he is right, it is costing. We've gone through our complete inventory of spare signs, so we will be purchasing more signs and posts to upgrade the signage.
All right. Just maybe I have the CFO here too. I mean, Councillor Cunliffe was particularly thinking of signing Upper Kelvin. And let's just pick a number, let's say 5 for the sake of argument in the closest area. This really isn't a big number, is it?
You're probably looking at $125 a signpost with sign.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to hold over the piece about signing Upper Kelvin, which will be another little piece of this. Okay, so we've gone around the horn twice, and the substantial nothing, it's unanimous, increased parking fines and towing. So CAO, we can talk about a number, or unless I value your time and staff's time. The number that I pitched, which was 200, we could have a quick talk amongst the council there. I think your time is too valuable to find out what other municipalities are doing, because we don't have a unique situation, but it's in our face right now, and we're trying to send a strong message.
I thought that there was perhaps consensus on doubling the fines.
I was going for the nice cosmetic number 200 myself, but I tell you what, I'm going to let the councillors weigh in on this one. So I'll quickly go through everybody, and we'll just focus on the number for those sections that are, let's call it the parking related ones, and then we'll hand it back to the CAO. Councillor Abbott, you're first up.
Yeah, I think the doubling is the simplest way, because we don't have to sit and go through each one and decide the merits of them. They've already been weighted in a certain way. So you just double everything that's got the word parking in it. And that's, no one needs to discuss it too much further. So my vote.
So just on this one, Councillor Abbott, I just pulled open the sheet. So it's parking near a fire hydrant or fire equipment. Currently it's $80, so you're proposing it goes to $160.
Correct.
Okay, all right, well, again, we'll let everybody else weigh in. I think 200 resonates more with me, but there we go. I'd like all the councillors to weigh in on what number they like.
I like a nice round 200. It's punchy. It's not without some heft. I think it's a good number.
Okay, Councillor Bain, what do you like for a number?
I don't mind doubling it just for simplicity, like Councillor Abbott is saying. No sense making more work than we have to. But as I was going through the list, I noticed, for example, driving over a fire apparatus, there's a sort of a nominal fine. And to that one, I think we should put and costs. Like if somebody damages the hose, for example, if they run over it, they should be on the hook for a new hose, because you're getting into safety issues there. But I still would like to see, when we get into a pandemic thing and lives are at stake, that whatever we decide to tonight, I'd still like to have sort of a sort of an amendment to the parking thing, that under the circumstances of a pandemic, they double from again. And because people just don't seem to be taking it seriously, that we're a small community and we have a older society than many places, and they needed to be treated with respect.
Thank you very much. So you're in the double. Councillor Cunliffe, weigh in on the number, please.
Yeah, I actually like 200 as well. I think that that's going to send a strong statement. And I also think that, as Councillor Barnier said, our issue with visitors is not going to get better. It's not going, people don't respect what we have in place. So I say 200 moving forward, and nothing changes after the pandemic. It just stays as is.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Abbott, one more time.
I guess I'll ask the question before staff does. So if you're making it 200, are we saying that every item 10A through 10L now becomes 200? Because some of them are 80, some of them are 45, some of them are 65.
No,
They seem to be weighted for severity. Are we going to make it all 200?
excellent question. And what I was going to do was, the request is to give the CAO direction. So my thinking here was to, he's heard what we had to say, that the range is somewhere between double what we have on page 26 of 190 to 200. And I'll let him come forward at the next council meeting at 1st of June with the amended stuff, if that would be fine, and then we can fine tune the number one more time if we have to.
Could I suggest we do it faster than that? Do we need to? I don't give Peter the guidelines now.
I'm fine with that too.
I would like to see that Facebook page with all the people flaunting our rules. Someone post a message, oh, they just doubled their fees, beware. It might happen in a month's time, because it's going to be another council meeting, approval, put it in action.
Well, I'm with you on this one, but if I was to call a vote right now on 200, it'd be 3-2 in favor of the 200. So, I mean, I get what you're trying to say in terms of the expedience.
I'll move it away for expediency.
Yes,
Sorry, Councillor Abbott raises a good point in that we have different rates for different things here. So because of that, it would be a lot simpler to simply double everything, because then it maintains the degree of severity, as opposed to trying to figure out, okay, if it's okay, so some things are gonna be 200, how much are the, how much is park on a bridge, which is currently 45?
Yeah.
Is that gonna be 100, is it gonna be 125? We get into a whole, level of detail and trying to discern between the various ones. If you wanna go severe on, you wanna go more severe than doubling, then triple. That's up to you, but by doing one of the two, then you maintain the different levels between the severity of the fines. Otherwise, yeah, we're gonna be here quite a while trying to
Well,
figure
no,
out
and I'm
how much
sure-
to put for each one.
Thank you, and I'm trying to push this baby along, so thank you, Councillor Abbott, thank you, CAO. I hadn't thought of the specter of tripling, but I like the idea.
I like triple too.
Now, although, before, I'm gonna go around here, because we gotta nip to the point on this one. The CFO does point out to me, I thought the number was skewed towards non-residents who received parking tickets. She does point out to me that the staff's belief, and they don't actually have the number, that the split between resident and non-residents is something like 40-60 or 35-65. So round numbers, a third of the people who are receiving tickets are our residents.
Just let them know that residents will get tickets, no matter what the
Well,
split
they
is.
have been
Residents
ticketed, so,
will get tickets, yeah.
okay, so when everybody does their piece, this is what it means. Okay, all right. I suppose what we could, all right. So it's a double or triple?
If you want to pass it tonight, if you want to bring it back in 2 weeks, then we can fine tune it, but
Good, all right.
I think that the impetus is to do something,
Okay, definitely yes, okay.
Even tripling doesn't get us close to 200 on most of these fines. It still doesn't carry the kind of weight we want it to carry.
well, the majority of tickets that are issued are the $65 fines. So you triple that, that's $195.
Okay, that's pretty close.
That's most of the tickets.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to make the same observation.
Okay,
So if it helps break the tiebreak, I'll take my double off the table and I'll make it triple.
I'm in favor of triple.
I'm in favor of triple as well.
Councillor Bain,
Go for the trifactor.
good. And Councillor Barmeyer, you can close the loop.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in favor.
All right, okay, so this is a two-piece thing. So, got the guidelines for the going forward CAO. And on the towing, council's unanimous on the towing. So I think, I'm not sure whether does this start immediately or does this come back to us the first week in June?
You need to make a motion that is seconded and passed that you will be tripling, or, sorry, maybe I missed it, maybe you just did that. And you've got to do 3 readings of the bylaw amendment, which, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't have a bylaw in front of you.
All
Not
right.
sure that we can actually do this tonight.
Okay, well, I tell you what.
You need to have a bylaw in front of you to pass to get 3 readings and
Okay, all
adopt
right,
it, so
let's
it's gonna come back, I'm sorry.
Well, that's fine. Okay, you got the direction, it's a triple. We can, and we are going to move towards aggressive towing. So if it's going to come back, you might want to buff up the towing policy too.
With respect to the tripling, are we talking just 10A through 10L?
I think, well,
Or are we talking everything?
I think anything that has the word park in it is kind of a,
Well, these are just summaries of the actual provisions in the bylaw. The actual wording of the bylaw in respect of each subsection would be what is in effect. These are just summaries for easy reference.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I think it's all of 10. It's all the parking stuff.
Well, we can't do, so all of 10?
That's,
And 12.
and 12, park near school. I don't know what that means, but,
Yeah, I have to double check that.
okay. All right, Councillor Cunliffe, let's nip through this. Councillor Cunliffe, you're up.
I was just going to suggest that maybe prior to being able to pass the new bylaw or the amended bylaw, that we just send out a strong message that Lions Bay has now effectively tripled all of its parking fines that will be coming into play in the very short term. Make sure we communicate it to the residents that they're not immune to that either. But we could get the word out before we actually put it into place.
That was going to be my recommendation too, and I was going to ask the CAO to do that.
So my question would be, if we get the word out now and we don't increase the fines for another 2 weeks, isn't that sending a mixed message, or aren't people just going to say, huh, it's still the old price when they get their ticket?
They'll see that for now, but they've been told that it will happen. So if they decide that they're going to shirk and disrespect what we're doing now, then it's going to come back to them in 2 weeks' time.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Cunliffe. Let's hold on this, and I do thank you again. My people here are just working on our behalf. I have some time on my hands. We could do a special meeting to accelerate this.
Yep.
Yep,
Sure.
agreed.
Sounds good.
Zoom next
I'm
slide.
in favor of that as well.
Okay, I need a motion to that effect.
Uh,
But I would suggest that you discuss option point 2 on considering opening the parking lots, and at the end of everything, you can make a motion to direct staff to bring back the bylaw at a specific date.
Okay. All right, I've been directed by the corporate secretary, sitting in front of me, the secretary. Thank you very much. So we're, just the flavor of this is that we are going to triple and that we are going to move towards a more aggressive towing policy. Carla's suggested that we move on to the second piece of this, and once we're concluded with that, we may be going to a motion that gets us into a special meeting to bring it all back together. I'll take that as yeses, but I see Councillor Cunliffe, you're up.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand.
Thank you very much. Okay. So if I can go over everybody to the second piece, which is opening the parking lots at Main Beach, KG Beach, and the Sunset Trailhead. This is pretty straightforward, and the CAO's already spoken on behalf of it. I agree with his points. I am a yes on Lions Bay Beach Park, and yes on the trailhead, and a hard no on KG Park. I'll look for points of view or discussion. Councillor Abbott?
Sorry, my screen changed. I keep missing the mute button. There's one down the bottom. I have another Lions Bay Beach Park. I know the numbers of today. I've become a bit of a stat watcher. I know they've gone down. We're starting to open up things today. But if we don't control our parking, I would hate to see what that beach looks like on the next sunny day. I know it's not going to be the less faces in more open places that we've been directed to try achieve. When we started talking about opening the beach park, I had all sorts of thoughts in mind. How can we do it some way? Could we do it in a rotation system where you only go down there for 2 hours and then you leave, and then the beach is clear for half an hour, and how do you manage that? All around ways to try to allow residents who I think do deserve to be able to use a beach park or have the easier access to the beach park than necessarily non-residents. I mean, we have 1,500 people in this village. That's one tower block in Vancouver. I mean, it's unreasonable for us to be able to provide infrastructure for those people. How are we going to open the washrooms? I mean, we're still not allowed to open washrooms unless they're clean. We can't do it. We're going to sanitize them between uses. I don't know. We're not there yet. We started with trying to control things through controlling parking. I think we've probably tempered things a little bit, and you know, we keep going back then and trying to adjust our plan. But I'm not ready to open this stuff until we're sure we can keep the numbers down. Certainly not the beach bar.
All right, thank you very much. And where are you on the Sunset Trailhead, Councillor Abbott?
The crowds of hikers that are going up are a similar issue, but they're not as bad as I foresee the beach bar becoming. I personally would just leave everything in place. But you know, those eight parking going to make any difference? It's probably just 8 other people that are going to go park somewhere at the school that's we're trying to not park either. So I'm a little more flexible on that. But what kind of message does it say? Are we releasing things or not? I think we should hold the course for now on everything, to be honest.
On the works. Thank you very much. And next up is Councillor Bean.
I'm not in favor of opening the parking at Lions Bay Beach until we're all ready on the beach park to maintain it as Councillor Abbott has described. And I don't see that happening until we get the okay from the provincial health officer. I think we should keep this thing conservative and cautious, because as soon as we open it up, they're going to come in droves. So that's how I feel with Lions Bay. Sunset, I'd be more flexible on. We're only talking about 8 spaces, but I don't know if that's going to make much impact one way or the other. And Kelvin Grove, to me, is just a definite no.
Good. Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe.
I have to agree with Neville and Fred, and Neville specifically. I just think we keep everything closed until we decide it's all open, with the exception of Kelvin Grove, depending on where we are in construction.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmeyer, I get to weigh in.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Fred and Jamie and Neville that I feel like we'll easily be overwhelmed if we start opening up our parking lots again. It's going to be just too hard for us to control. The numbers just don't work out in our favor. We're too small of a community to allow that for now.
Thank you very much. All right, so the consensus is that the parking lots remain closed. So I think if I've got this right, Carla, then, so I'm going to pull the two of them together and
Make a motion.
leave it with staff to bring forward the changes at a special meeting date to be announced. Okay. All right.
Did you want to
clarify something?
Yes.
The sector by sector guidelines are coming out now in dribs and drabs. Recreation and parks is something that there's more information coming out on. We have to review all of the information. The public health officer is not going to come along and say, yes, you can open your park. They simply provide, sector by sector, we have guidelines and criteria that are coming out, whether it's an office or whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a park. You look at those, you figure out what the criteria are, you apply it to your own facilities, and you determine what steps you need to take in order to open, if you can open, while maintaining social distancing and keeping a lid on the number of people gathering in any one location. So it's up to us to design criteria and procedures, and what does that look like for our own facilities. Nobody else is going to do that for us. That's the process that we are about to undertake in respect of the office, in respect of the village hall, and in respect of the parks. So I'm not in a position to tell you what that looks like yet, but we'll continue to work on that, and hopefully we'll have more information at the next meeting, and you can revisit it then, because we'll have to revisit it continuously, I suspect. And there are 15 or 16 parking spots at Sunset.
Thank you very much for putting that in perspective. Okay, so thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm going to put the motion together as Carla suggested, so that the motion is that the penalties as identified are tripled, and that the village will undertake a more aggressive towing policy, and that the 3 named parking lots remain closed at this time, and that this being direction to staff to come back to council with the final particulars at a special meeting date to be named. Can I have a seconder on that? Thank you, seconder. Any discussion, any refinement to it? All in favor, please say aye. Nays opposed, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That closes this section. Public Works Manager, get your voice warmed up. This is an information report on Timbertop Road and Panorama Place parking, and that's in your agenda and on page 39 of your package.
So essentially, what we have here is 2 areas that over the last 4 years, I've been fielding calls from the waste collection people and first responders regarding access problems. This year alone, in 2019, we had 4 separate instances where either a garbage truck or a first responder or public works was blocked from accessing the cul-de-sac at the end of these 2 locations. This year, during the snowfall, we had 2 instances where we couldn't get our plow through and couldn't salt the road. We are working with and reaching out to and talking to the residents. I did want council to be aware of the issues that we have at these 2 locations. The width of the road does not meet the Transport Association of Canada guidelines for road width for a 2-lane road plus a parking lane. Basically, both roads only support a single parking lane. I think that's pretty much it. The rest is in the report. Unless the CAO would like to add anything.
Peter, anything? No?
Nope.
Thank you. To staff, I recognize that we're being asked that this is being received for information purposes, and I don't want to get too much into the operations other than to say that in speaking with a resident on this street, they believe there may be a kinder and gentler way to do this. They recognize this resident, and according to the submission that's here, it appears that the issue is too little real estate for too many cars. And when that is the case, both sides are used. So the resident that I spoke to suggested that they were prepared to go to the street members and perhaps see that larger vehicles are on one side, smaller vehicles are on the other side, to ensure that there can be passageway for the government vehicles and the waste trucks, and that there might be another consideration. I guess really where I'm going with this is that I see something that staff wants, and there's good reasons, and we've seen the pictures, and we don't want to be have it on our watch that ambulances can't get by, or the fire engine can't get by when somebody's in distress. But then on the flip side here, I see what looks like a street that is, they want what they want, and they want it to go back to the day of yore, if I can be so candid, and that can't be right either. So I feel that again, and I'm very cognizant, this is about being received, not, and I hope you'll take our input. So my ask would be that if this resident who has pitched themselves as a bit of an angel to me could come up with a kinder and gentler way of doing this, would staff be amenable to it?
We've been monitoring it extremely closely since December, when the changes were made. And since then, like I said, we've had 2 separate instances where the plow couldn't get through. All it would take is one instance where a fire truck couldn't get through or an ambulance couldn't get through. And we're basically relying on residents to self-police themselves.
Yes.
I don't know that that's a surefire solution.
Well, you're absolutely correct. You're correct. I'm going to let the other councillors weigh in. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, just as I read the report, I think on the timber top issue, where they're trying to get more cars into a small space by angle parking, they're actually increasing the problem that you're addressing. And I was just wondering, this wouldn't work so much in the winter, unfortunately, but is it possible to put white lines down either side of the road where we would restrict how far out onto the road the cars could be, so that they would push the cars closer to the bush or the shoulder? I don't know if that would.
That was a suggestion. But again, you're talking about increased enforcement to monitor that. And if a car did park there that was too long, and somebody had to get through and couldn't, we'd be in the same position. On Timbertop, we did create an additional 20 parking spots, not more than 30-40 feet away from the angled parking. So there is plenty of new parking that we created, just a few feet away.
I guess if you.
And I think that picture's in the report as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for clarity, my piece was totally devoted to Panorama.
Panorama, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have had residents contrary to those as well. So there's a mix of both pro and con.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I've shot my bolt on this one. Then if the resident who is described as the angel comes forward to you, Public Works Manager, you can listen to what they have to say, but from my perspective then, I'll put forward the motion that this is received. I have a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, ayes. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Okay, next item, which is item 7A3, CAO, request for decision on the food trucks. That's on page 49 of your packages.
Okay, so the information's all there in terms of where we've come from and where we're at. There's a resident volunteer who's trying to spearhead bringing in food trucks a little more often and treating residents to that opportunity. We've got a few dates, but we expect to get more, and my suggestion to council is that you grant a blanket permission for this endeavor from now until, I think I put October 31st or something like that. And subject to coordination of any opportunities between the resident volunteers and staff, and that would include signing off on the draft agreement, or not the draft agreement, but the agreement that we have for this purpose, which was previously approved back in 2017. And I think that would just keep it simple in terms of, yeah, you like the concept if you do, let staff and the volunteers work through the details anytime an opportunity comes along.
Thank you very much. Without reading the point 1, point 2, I will propose both of those recommendations. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We've got a seconder from Councillor Abbott. Any discussion on this?
I just have one question. So the last one, we opened up the parking at Kelvin Grove Beach to use it for the food truck.
No. Lions Bay Beach. Lions Bay
Lions
Beach.
Bay Beach Park, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Is that the intended location going forward, or do we have other options? Was that best we can do at the time?
If I can answer that one, Councillor Abbott, the individual, the resident, in good heart and good spirit, tried to do something without knowing all the players, and she was going to put it at the school parking lot until she was told no at the last minute. Came back to me, and I went to the CAO and the works manager, and the two of them overnight agreed to lift the blocks for the LB parking lot to facilitate the event. I think that so that was a one-off, and it was made clear it was a one-off. I think that when the CAO reviews their applications, part of that's going to be where are you going to park, what's your social distancing thing, the whole package that I'm comfortable with them dealing with.
Yeah, I think that there's one coming up May 29th, I think is pretty much set, subject to council's decision tonight. And I thought that one could probably go ahead in the same Lions Bay Beach Park setting as we used last time. Beyond that, I think there's one around June 18th. Based on the conversation tonight, we might be able to again use the Lions Bay Beach Park parking lot for that. We can also circle back to the school district and have a discussion about opening up that lower parking lot for these kinds of events. But we can explore those things. We could also look at doing one in the Kelvin Grove parking lot, if that makes sense. So there's those options, and yeah, but I think that we can work through that with the volunteers.
Thank you very much. All right, any other questions, discussion? No, I'll call a motion. All in favor, ayes please, or nays opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Good, it's passed. Thank you very much, unanimous. And the next one up is item number 4 from the DEPC, who's been waiting in the wings, Mr. Whitney.
All right, so this is with regards to the ESS, and we haven't had an ESS director in a while. As you can see in the report, this is something that a lot of communities have had problems with, and the Red Cross has stepped up over the last couple of years to provide that service. So I am recommending that we enter into an agreement with the Red Cross so that they would provide management for the ESS team. They would work with our existing team to provide those services, and they would provide management, training, and retention of the volunteers. It would provide our ESS team with some much needed direction, I think.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this concise and informative report. We'll go to discussion in just a second. So the staff recommendation is, as you can see, item number 1 and item number 2. So I'll put forward that as a motion. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you, second. And then we'll go to discussion. Councillor Abbott, you had your hand up. And then down.
Yep. No, well, yeah, I put it down because I thought I'd jump the gun.
Okay.
A couple of questions, really. One question, one observation. Page 56, say there's 13 communities in BC currently. Rob, do you have any idea what the 13 are and the size of them?
I do, just one second here, I had it, Squamish is their test community. Just one second here. They had it, it was in the package in one of the documents that I sent.
I didn't find a list anyway, but maybe I missed it.
Kootenai Boundary Regional District, District of Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, Alberti, Clayoquot Regional District, Tofino, the Powell River Regional District, Thompson, Nicola Regional District, North Okanagan, and Central Kootenai are the ones that they have listed in their documentation.
It sounds like your communities much larger than us struggle with this. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry, if I could just clarify that a little bit. With respect to regional districts, they would only be in respect of unincorporated communities within those regional districts. So for example, little communities like Britannia Beach and Furry Creek, any unincorporated community in any of those regional districts, that's what we're talking about. So yes, a regional district can be quite large, but in fact, when you're putting those resources on the ground, you're talking about doing it in small communities like ours.
Thank you very much. And I have one, Councillor, still going?
I was, yes.
Yep, sorry.
So yeah, thank you for that point, Peter, which kind of raises another question in my mind. So the smaller communities around us, then, do each one of them have an ESS? Or
Every community is required to provide ESS support.
oh, so those regional districts could have half a dozen ESSs?
Correct.
Okay.
Usually they work together under the regional district, but each community should be providing ESS support.
Okay. So my second question was on the cost, and you've got a table in here, and it gives population size and our annual investment, which I guess is the fee or the cost to us. So we are the smallest population group of 0 to 2,000, which suggests we only have an annual fee of $2,000, which to me sounds like a bargain. But unfortunately it then says for the training or the managing of 2 to 4 volunteers. I believe our ESS has something like 10 volunteers. Do we expect that puts us in the 5 to 50,000 and the $10,000 a year? And I assume it's still going to be negotiated, but do we have a feel for that? Which of those criteria is most likely to drive the cost? Population size or number of volunteers?
This was actually something Peter and I were discussing today, and the impression that I've got, and I'm going to go back to my contact at the Red Cross to clarify this, is that the annual investment is based on population only. The numbers for volunteers there are just giving you an idea of how many volunteers are going to be required for that community. Different communities might require more based on the number of hazards that the community faces. So I will clarify that and I'll get back to council with that just to get a firm yes or no from the Red Cross on if that investment goes up with the number of volunteers.
So,
okay, thanks. I'm just not sure how that might weigh on people's minds if we're voting tonight. But anyway, if you can
actually,
think about that.
Councillor Lab,
It's 2 to 10.
let's do the vote. Let's do the vote tonight with the proviso on the lower number.
That works.
Okay.
Or a cap, perhaps. You can cap it at 3 or 4 if you want.
Let's call it 4. We'll get to the vote on this one. Okay, Councillor Bain, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question that Neville just did, but the other point that I'd like to make is that this is going to be welcome relief for a tired ESS team who's struggling, and they're a talented bunch, big hearts and the whole works, but this is something that none of them really wanted to take on, so I think the Red Cross helping them out is just going to be a huge lift.
Good, thank you very much. All right, so then, any other questions? All right, I will call the, actually, I don't think we made a motion on this one, did we, Carmen? We went right to discussion. I think that's what we did. In an abundance of caution, you have this two-part staff recommendation, which I will put forward as a motion, subject to cost not exceeding $4,000. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Any discussion? There being none, call a motion. All in favor? Ayes, please. Nays opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Whitney, you're warmed up and you're on the deck again. Request for decision on the CWPP response from contractors. This one I will read. That council provide direction to staff as to which contractor to employ to complete a suitable community wildfire protection plan for Lions Bay, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute an agreement accordingly. I'll put forward that motion. Can I have a seconder, please? I need a hand. Thank you. All right, we're in discussion phase here. Actually, Robert, we'll let you do the quick update for us.
Okay, so this is going back to the community wildfire protection plan that we discussed. Peter and I took your concerns to the contractors to see how they would address those concerns. I've included a copy of both of their response letters in the package. And they both acknowledge that there is some concern with FireSmart, which was the, I think, biggest concern from council was how would we adopt FireSmart in Lions Bay. Diamond Head had some really good points in their letter about it's a tool, but they would work with the community to try and make FireSmart work. It doesn't always work for every community, and they acknowledge that. So having received those responses from the contractors, we would like to move forward with the community wildfire protection plan. And we would just like some direction from council as to which contractor to engage.
Thank you very much. Okay, the motion's in discussion. So it's door number 1 or door number 2? So, any discussion? I see Councillor Abbott first up, please.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Yeah, I read through their responses and I kind of felt that they both said very similar things on the first two questions or clarifications, whichever you choose to call them. I do think Diamond Head had a much better, or resonated much better with me, their response on the FireSmart. So you read the response, and I read the actual letter itself as well as your summary. The Blackwell seemed to be sort of defending why FireSmart needs to be there, whereas Diamond Head comes out and says, yeah, FireSmart is going to conflict with a whole lot of other goals that you want to get. They talk about a multitude of other values for keeping trees, and that, I think, the whole issue we were discussing, and they come out and say it in those words. My vote would be based purely on that response, that I would go with Diamond Head. Yeah, I think I'll just.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors want to weigh in? Councillor Barnard, you were pretty outspoken on this last time.
Yeah, no, I'm aligned with Councillor Abbott. I do think Diamond Head kind of got to the meat of what the issue was, and that our values can be different or are different in our community. So it's, I would go with Robert's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Any other councillor want to make any points, questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm more familiar with Blackwell, having worked with them before. Diamond Heads, I don't know, I don't really know them at all. I think they're both very credible outfits. I've got nothing against either of them, so choosing one or the other makes no difference to me. It's just get the job done. That's fine.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Councillor Abbott?
Nobody did.
His hand's still up, sorry. There we go. I too, I hate to echo, I felt that Diamond Head did a better Lions Bay concentric response than the other, the competitor did. So I'm going to call the motion. Call the motion amended as follows, that the contract is awarded to Diamond Head. Can I have a seconder for the amended motion? Thank you. Any further discussion? Call the motion. All in favor, ayes. Nays opposed. Thank you very much. You're in a winning streak, Mr. Whitney. There you go.
Thank
And
you very much.
there you go. Thank you for your hard work on that one, as well as the predecessor. And that the next piece is also by Mr. Whitney regarding the evacuation planning, and that the motion is that the planning is received. I'll put forward that motion, and I'll ask for a second for discussion. A hand, please. Thank you. All right, Mr. Whitney, can you tell us about this?
This was, as you said, for information purposes, I just wanted to update council as to where we are with evacuation planning, because I know this topic comes up quite often. I've looked at some evacuation planning that was done quite recently by Whistler and Squamish. And I modeled what I feel we should be doing from my conversations with the coordinators in Whistler and Squamish. We do have an evacuation plan. It does need some work. So one comment I've heard before is that there isn't an evacuation plan, but there has been, from my understanding, since 2009. That was Appendix E that some of you received in your emails. Actually, all of you should have received it in your emails. And as I outline in my report, I understand that there is some work that needs to be done. I would like to do some traffic analysis so that we can highlight trouble spots evacuating the village. This was a big eye-opener in Squamish and Whistler when they contracted ISL to do some traffic analysis. They found out it would take 12 hours to evacuate Squamish. They had no idea it would take that long based on their traffic analysis. We need to divide the village into evacuation zones to help facilitate partial evacuations or even tactical evacuations with no notice. We should keep an accurate account of the populations within those zones, so that if we're doing an evacuation, those in charge know how many people need to be evacuated. And we need to develop procedures. So that is where we are at with the evacuation plan. There is a grant that is available through UBCM that I'm going to be applying for as well to help get some of this done. Unfortunately, COVID happened right around the time that grant application was going to be due, and that's been put on hold until further notice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitney. And I'll start. First question: If the perfect world fell in front of you, what would it take for timing for this to move forward and come to fruition?
Working 2 days a week, it'll take a little bit of time. The traffic analysis needs to be done by a contractor. ISL is who Squamish and Whistler used, and they highly recommend them. They loved the work that they did. That would probably, I would say probably about 3 months, 4 months for that to be done, for the modeling and everything to be, the report to be drawn up.
We would have to put it out to RFP though.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, that was.
So, not to put words in your mouth then, so we, with a little bit of luck, we'll see this by the end of the calendar year?
It depends on when the grant application process is opened up again.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions on this topic? Councillor Bain?
Well, I got a few thoughts on the thing. Yeah, regarding the prior evacuation plans, there was something in body sitting in the emergency plan, but it was so scant and of any real facts and details that they were next to useless. So I agree, we do need more evacuation planning. To me, it's a given. But I also caution when we get into more planning in this regard is to remember we're just a town of 1,325 residents, and we're not Whistler and we're not Pemberton. We have a simple sloping terrain with very few streets. So I'm thinking that this formalized traffic analysis is kind of overkill. I mean, we all know how to get out of the village in most cases. The issues we have with getting out in an evacuation are if we can't use the roads. And that's why we did that trail mapping thing last year, which we divided the Lions Bay into evacuation zones, which seemed more logical. You know, it needs a bit more work. People need to look at it more. But I'm kind of thinking we should scale our studies to us, not a big community, because this is really simple. And I'd hate to read another study that starts out with something like Lions Bay is a community on the hillside of Howe Sound and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I think we need to start getting to think more simply. I don't mean stupidly, but just keep it simple. And like we all here understand our demographics to some degree. We need more information, such as people who will be needing special care to get out if we have to evacuate. No, all that's good study. And I don't really see any reason why a subcommittee of the Emergency Program Committee could not pool their collective knowledge of the many years serving Lions Bay in the emergency and related fields and determine what all of the above is relevant. So I think the majority of an evacuation plan could be done not in-house like this staff, but in a subcommittee. And regarding the COVID-19 situation and the masses of money senior government is spending on keeping citizens viable, there may not be much grant funding available, especially for a 5-figure consultant. So, I don't know. To sum up, I have mixed feelings about this quite candidly, and I don't know. I think we need to think Lions Bay style, not bigger city style, and just keep it simple.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bain. Mr. Whitney, you've had a chance to reflect on this. Any comments?
I agree we need to tailor it to Lions Bay, and I understand where Councillor Bain is coming from when he speaks to Lions Bay not being Squamish or Whistler. So I have no problem starting with the subcommittee, looking at it, and if we need to, we can move out from there.
So, okay.
Can I make a comment? I think all of the things in those 4 bullets that are on page 2 of the report are all things that need to be done. You know, putting aside the traffic analysis for a second, the next ones are all things that we should be doing. And they're things that we can do as, you know, whether it's Robert working on some of this stuff, subcommittee working on stuff, identifying options for evacuation, whether it's trails, routes, other means by which people, you know, pre-planning can identify all of the things that we think that it should identify, and we can do that work. But I think that all of these things, including the traffic analysis, is something that we ought to be doing as well. so that we have a full picture of everything that we need to know. And I think that definitely there's things that we can do at the local level and amongst ourselves to utilize the knowledge that residents have and that council has, and go that route. But I think that these are all things that we need to look at, and you know, maybe the traffic analysis, obviously it's not going to be a $200,000 study like what they did for Whistler and Squamish, but it can be something pretty basic that makes sure that we're covering off all of the things that we're going to need to cover off in terms of analyzing how we get people out of the village and to a safe place, whether it's up the highway, down the highway, how we're going to have to, you know, incorporate other means of transit for those who need it. All these things need to be part of that big picture, and we need to have operational details in terms of how we would implement that. You know, you've got sort of the general plan that is public facing, and then you've got the operational aspects of implementing that plan, and that's internal. So we need to work through all of those things and make sure that we know everything we need to know when we need to know it, before we need to know it, I think.
There we go. Well, I think before I go to the next two speakers, so in just a second, so it's Councillor Abbott and then Councillor Cunliffe. I think where we've left this is Robert has the ball, and I think he's responding to Councillor Baines, but I think we're all in agreement to your comments, CAO. All right, Councillor Abbott.
Yeah, I think I'm probably just going to be echoing some of the stuff that was said earlier. I think Councillor Bain put it very well. I agree, get the subcommittee going. I think we need to get some communication out to the village, and we need to do something sooner rather than later. Anything, an improvement is better than nothing. We can't afford to wait, A, for a $20,000 grant, and B, to get it perfect before we do something. So yeah, I think get the subcommittee going, let's start looking at things very localized. There's been a lot of talk and work done by residents in Council Bain on full evacuation, if that's what's needed, if streets are blocked. Let's at least start communicating some of that. And then if we do get a grant later and we manage to make this thing more robust and polish it up, great. And if there is no grant, and this is the path we need to go, at least we're making progress and not waiting for something that may or may not happen. As a point about COVID, who knows how much money is going to be in any government coffers in a few months' time? Not much, until the taxpayers start coughing up some more in the next cycle.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunliffe?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually echo Peter's point on the traffic analysis. While we do all know how to get out of the village, or at least to the Highway 99, we need to know where we're going from that point, and that, I think, does merit having some more analysis done.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmeyer?
I have to be honest, I don't really understand the difference between what the emergency operations center would do in an event like this, which is that housed in Lions Bay? Is that a regional thing? And an actual evacuation plan? Because it sounds like there's a bit of a disconnect here, and I don't understand it. What's the deliverable for our community? Are we going to show them something? Like, what's the actual tool?
And Mr. Whitney, can you respond?
I can. Again, Squamish and Whistler published a public-facing document that didn't have the operational guidelines within it, but it had maps of the communities with the evacuation zones and where your rally points would be that were distributed to the communities. They also had tips for what you should prepare in case you do have to evacuate. So there's always those kinds of deliverables that we can give out to the village as we develop them.
Okay, so that's the difference then. We're really just trying to produce a public-facing document with maps and kits. But we're not trying to get into the operational details, because that's not, you know, that's where the break point for me kind of falls apart. Why are we having such a hard time issuing a kit with some maps and some guidance on what to do in an emergency? That seems so simple. If the public-facing document doesn't involve any data or research, it's just a map and some instructions. Why don't we have that already? That's the part I'm struggling to understand.
I can't answer why we don't have it already, but the one that you would produce would be based on those operational guidelines. So you would develop the operational guidelines, and then you would develop the public-facing document based on those guidelines. That document is informed by those operational guidelines and procedures that the emergency responders and staff would follow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitney. And Councillor Bain, next up.
Just about Norm's question there about the documents and stuff. ESS in Lions Bay for years has been promoting the 72-hour pamphlet of how to prepare for the next 72 hours in the event of an emergency. And they've also relied on North Shore Emergency Management's documents and publications and stuff. So every time that we would have a public safety meeting, ESS would bring all that material out. So it is readily available, and as far as access to the documents, anybody could, well, as a matter of fact, I think we used to even have it on our website. I'm not sure if it's still there, but anyhow, it's a lot of that stuff is already readily available.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Councillor Barmeyer, your hand is still up. Can you put it down? And I'm going to call Councillor Abbott, and we'll close the discussion on this with his final comments.
Thanks. The last time we discussed this, Fred and Robert were going to get together and look at some of the stuff that Fred already has in his possession. There's already an attempt at a document that could be the public-facing document. It needs some work, it's got some gaps. Did that happen?
Mr. Whitney?
I did get a copy of the document that Councillor Bain was referring to, the trail maps, and that is only one portion of what a public-facing document would be made up of. So unfortunately, we don't have that public-facing document yet. Again, 2 days a week, I have to divide my time with what is most pressing at that moment.
So you guys didn't have the conversation that we discussed, have you?
We had an email conversation about it.
All right, Councillor Abbott, you're done? Yes, take it. Councillor Abbott, can you put your hand down then? All right, I think if there's no further discussion, which I'll see by a show of hands, then I will consider that the evacuation planning has been received. There being no show of hands, it is unanimous that we are proceeding. Mr. Whitney, you've had the last three topics on the agenda, being the ESS service agreement with the Red Cross, the CWPP response from contractors, and also the evacuation planning. No good job goes unrewarded by council asking you to do more. I was hoping that you could put this into either one article or a series of articles in the Village Update over the next couple of weeks. Would that be okay?
It would be.
Thank you very much. Next item, and this is the request for decision on the application for parking of extraordinary permits, and it is on page 103. The staff recommendation is that Council approves the May 14, 2020 application for parking of extraordinary vehicle with the following provisions. Number one, parking location of the trailer shall be across from 380 Bayview Place per the designation of the Manager of Public Works. And I will put that forward as a motion till we go to discussion. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. We are seconded and now in discussion, and we'll lead that discussion with the Public Works Manager, please.
So, based on the feedback, the original location was where the previous extraordinary vehicle that the village had a permit for would park. So that's across from 425 Upper Bayview. Based on the feedback that we received from the impacted residents, an alternate location was chosen, and that's the one that's directly across 380 Bayview.
And there we go, and thank you very much. And I'll be the first question, unless I misread this.
All else is pretty.
Sorry. Is that it, Public Works Manager?
I believe so. Peter's got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Gotta use that
I thought
little.
it also had to do with where we had the water main break and now we have a PRV station or some equipment there where the applicant was looking to park, and that was one of the key reasons why he couldn't park there.
Yeah, so I think one of the residents had commented directly across from the resident's place appeared to be newly gravelled. That was actually the location of a water main break, and it's also the location of our PRV station 4. So parking his trailer there doesn't allow us enough room to access that PRV station. When we access the PRV station, we need 2 trucks. We need to have a winch, a rescue winch, confined space gear, including fans and blowers to ventilate the PRV station. So we need all the room that's there along that area.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're still in the discussion. Councillor Abbott, you're first up.
So yeah, a couple of things. The photograph that shows a vehicle parked on the side of the road there, it looks like that one that was previously outside 425. Is that the photograph I'm looking at, the one that shows the trailer? Is that correct? I should maybe find the page for you. There was one photograph of the truck with the trailer, and I'm assuming that location is outside the 425. I wasn't sure whether that was outside the 425 or the 380 that's now been recommended. And that's Public Works Manager can clear that up. And as I say that, I can't find the one picture.
So the picture that is in the report,
Yeah, sorry, I had found it. It's page 121.
Yeah, so that picture, the trailer is being parked right over top of the PRV station there.
Ah, yeah, okay. I get it. Okay, right, so we don't want to do that anymore, definitely. Okay. So my major concern is we've now consulted the residents who would have been looking at it on Upper Bayview, and now we've recommended moving it to Bayview Place and put it in front of 3 other residents who haven't been consulted. So should we just rejecting this application? And if he wants to apply for a different place, then we have to go through it again, I thought.
yeah, we made an attempt to contact the residents at 380, 360, 370, but the only additional feedback we got was from somebody at 445, which is further up the road and further away, so not really relevant. Yeah, I mean,
Should we not be saying to this guy, sorry, it doesn't work there, if you want to try somewhere else, you can, but we should go back through this whole process for a different location, I would have thought. If I'm one of the other residents, I'm going to go, why did this happen to me and not buddy down the road?
I guess, you know, there's certainly that aspect of it, and we could table it and bring it back after getting feedback directly from 360, 70, and 80. But there is, there's an area there that the trailer can be completely off the road. It is from Public Works perspective, an appropriate place. There's nobody living directly above that. That's sort of, you know, you go around the corner to the north and you're at the bridge. So it's not directly in front of somebody's house on their side of the street. The driveways are across the street. It shouldn't affect them, you know, in terms of their view of the road. I can't speak to that, obviously, but there's no pinch point or difficulty in terms of access that would be created by allowing the trailer to park at that location. But certainly, certainly the residents, you know, you could table it and get the feedback from the residents at 360, 70, and 80, and possibly add it to the special meeting that you're going to consider setting a date for.
Yeah. I actually wrote down 375 as well, but I'm not sure if I was looking right.
Doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist?
No.
No, it's on the map.
Yeah, it's an old map.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we should be doing. There was just one other point. There was a place that the trail was referred to as 8.5 meters wide. I think it meant to be feet. Certainly don't think it's 8.5 meters wide. It was correct in some places and not in the original report.
Great, thank you very much, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Cunliffe?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious as to why do we need to park a trailer there and for how long? This isn't a permanent solution. So I agree with Councillor Abbott that we definitely need to poll the neighbors that will be directed, but from my perspective, our roadways are not parkings, like they're not storage for trailers. So I'm just curious as to, is this a temporary situation or is this a permanent sort of plan?
It's an annual permit and it can be renewed up to 3 years. So, or council can set a lesser date if you so choose.
Thank you very much, CAO and Councillor Abbott. One more kick at the cat.
Sorry, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I was just claiming as Councillor Cunliffe was talking there, to find the part in the regulation that I'd highlighted that says under which conditions you would do this. And it says you would do this where the person uses the vehicle for his primary work access within the village. Yeah, now you're going to make me find it again. 1 second.
Because it's section 11, 1 and 2 of the traffic and parking bylaw, which is quoted in the report.
And what does it actually say then?
It says the criteria is that council deems that it is dangerous or impractical to park an extraordinary vehicle or trailer by an owner of real property occupied by the owner by reason of the topography of that real property. Then the public works manager may designate and specify a parking space on the highway for the vehicle or trailer under the following circumstances. And there you have it, annual up to 3 years.
And
So you look at the picture, the first picture, the applicant's house is right there on the right-hand side. You can see the steepness of the driveway. What you also see is there's a couple of little wooden ramps, and what he normally has parked there is a recreational trailer, like a camping trailer, or is it a boat? I'm sorry, I forget. Nye, do you remember? One of the two.
Camping trailer, it's a camping trailer.
Okay, camping trailer.
Yeah,
The driveway is very steep, and it's understandable why it would not be practical, and I can't really speak to whether it's dangerous, but impractical certainly, to park his storage trailer on his own property. Which was the reason given and the reason why council allowed the last trailer, which was just down the road and on the uphill side.
Okay, I have found the rest of the bylaw language, and it says, if lack of ready access of the vehicle would cause genuine hardships, e.g. if used primarily for work within the village or is the resident's sole means of transport. And then it goes on to say, a yearly application made by council. So it makes that provision in there. Does this meet that criteria? Is it his only means of transport? No. Is it genuine hardship, and is it primarily used for work within the village? Those words are in the bylaw.
Those ones, well, the last application was a horse trailer. So it doesn't apply to that either. I'm just trying to find that language. So that's,
If you look at page 114 of these things, you can see one of the correspondences, or correspondence. In that, there's the language. You go down, italics, 4 lines down, if the lack of ready access, it gives a criteria when you do this. You see it?
yeah, well, the italicized paragraph?
Yeah.
So Neville, you're saying that really this shouldn't just become space for rent for no good reason. Hardship needs to be demonstrated.
Exactly.
All right.
I don't think this is a quote from the bylaw itself is what I'm getting at. I'm not sure where this language is from. It might have been in an earlier version of the bylaw. This is new staff quoting something, but I don't think that language is in the current version of the bylaw. I'll see if I can find it.
While you're doing that, I see my board is lit up with everybody who wants to talk about this. And that's fine, but let's hold it to a minute and to the point as we go down the tree. This is pretty simple in a complex way. It's either you're opposed, you defer to the next meeting pending the residents, the missing ones coming forward, or you approve, or I guess the final option, you approve with a, let's say a 90-day window to allow this resident to move it to parts unknown. CAO, are you ready?
Yeah. So that language is not in the bylaw. There's a definition of extraordinary vehicle, which is pretty straightforward. Means any vehicle having a licensed gross vehicle weight rating of 5,000 kilograms or more, or a vehicle having an overall length, including any attached trailer, exceeding 6.1 meters, except for vehicles owned or leased by the village or its agents. And then going down to the section, we have 11A, no person shall park an extraordinary vehicle between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. of the day immediately following on any highway in a residential district except when actively engaged in loading or unloading. So there's your basic starting point, is it's prohibited. And then that's overnight. No person shall park any trailer on the highway unless it's attached to a vehicle and not within a permit parking zone. So that was amended by bylaw 546, whereby people with boat trailers would park them all over the place, and basically said that you can't do that even if you have a parking permit. You can't park in it. If it's a parking permit required zone, you can't have your trailer attached to it on the street. So that was to deal with those kinds of issues. And then sub C is despite 11.1 and 2, if council deems that it's dangerous or impractical, and it's all the wording that's quoted in the report. There's nothing in addition, such as the italicized paragraph that was in staff's email to the neighbors. So that may have been part of an earlier version of the bylaw. I think it was amended back in, let's see, part 2. So it was amended in 2017. So back in 2017, we amended that section to add a 3-year limit for council approvals of extraordinary vehicle or trailer permits under section 11.31. But I'm not sure where the rest of that wording came from. It's in the italicized paragraph. It's not in the bylaw.
Good, thank you very much, CEO. Councillor Bain?
Criteria is that the driveway is too steep such that it's dangerous or impractical. That's the criteria for council to consider. Or you have to make that determination actually before you can go to step 2, which is it, where are you going to allow it to park, if at all?
There you go, Councillor Bain.
Yeah, I think I understand this driveway situation, and it is very difficult. I would not want to be voting for or against the thing unless I had clear direction from the close-in neighbors. Like, are they for it or are they not? The last thing we want is another neighborhood squabble.
There you go, thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Councillor Barmeyer?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Bain that we have to canvass the neighbors that are going to be directly looking at this trailer.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cunliffe?
Agreed, the new neighbors need to be canvassed, but as for the feedback from the neighbors that were, I have only one that is not opposed. Everybody is opposed, so.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm just, and again, I'm not sure why we, outside of an extreme circumstance where somebody needs to park a trailer on one of our roadways, a 3-year option to do so, I think should be revisited.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. I share that view, and again, as I precursed, the choices here, the motion is as it is. I'm prepared to amend it. You either approve it as it is, you decline it, or my suggestion is that you approve it for a period of 90 days to give this resident a time to move his vehicle elsewhere, or you table this for listening to the other 3 resident families that are nearby that didn't respond, but as Councillor Cunliffe says, it's fairly overwhelming, the people who are opposed to it, and apply my own logic to it. If I had one of these across the street from me, I would be very happy. So, Council, I'll ask you each where you'd like to go, and that'll be where we amend the motion. We'll start with Councillor Cunliffe, since you're still alive.
I would be in favor of a 90-day grace period to come up with an alternative plan.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barmeyer.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bain.
You're muted.
Councillor Bain, unmute. Are you approve, decline, extend, or table?
My first choice would be to table for approval from the neighbors. Without that, and I'd follow to what the other 2 have just suggested at the 90-day time to find another place.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I would go table to get the other neighbours. I don't know if both those conditions should be met probably, but
All right.
certainly not passing the way it stands at the moment.
All right. Well, you can never tell. These neighbors might just love that big honking white thing in front of their place. You're right. So I tell you what, then doing 3-2 on something like this where we can wait 2 weeks, I'm fine with that. So I will amend the motion. Actually, I will table the motion and allow staff to get back on those missing neighbors, and then we'll come up with whatever that information is. And if staff could actually put it in a simple format, how many were for, how many were against, and their street locations in one sheet, that'd be great. and then we'll reconsider it when it comes forward again.
Table until when, the special meeting or the next scheduled council meeting?
As you have the time to do it, either or.
And then how does council wish us to deal with the situation in the interim? He can or cannot park temporarily in the location until the next meeting.
I see, it comes up now. So his 3 years or his period is, no, it's not. When is he finished his period's up now?
No, this is a new application. This is
Okay,
not
new.
the previous.
I think I'll accept that he can park there until till the next meeting.
Okay, so whether it's a special meeting or the regular meeting depends on our ability to poll the neighbors
Yes,
that are directly across from that spot.
yes.
Because if you look at the picture, the bottom picture, the other neighbors aren't really going to be affected because it's going to be out of their view. The ones who already opined.
Okay,
I would have to say that it's not really whether it's in your view or not, it's the fact that there's a trailer that's potentially could be parked on your street for 3 years.
that would be my view as well, but I tell you what, I think we've tabled this with the conditions that either the special meeting or the one following, and staff to obtain the missing information and put it in a fashion that we can all see it easily and understand it quickly.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. And that was good. Next one is me, just a second. And then it'll be Councillor Barbier in a second. Thank you. And thank you. I'll be quick on this. And I'm bringing up the communications policy because of something I observed in one of the emails that I opened. And the thread of it was that that the council member preferred to know what the CAO and I were talking to before sending a letter out to a resident. I'm going to make this comment that during this pandemic period, it's probably not uncommon for the CAO and I to talk somewhere between, certainly it was much more early on, between 1 and 3 times a day on a wide variety of topics, and we do exchange emails regularly either on those topics or things of other relevant nature. And I believe I will just generally call this would be what everybody would expect to be within a normal mayor-CAO relationship that I know is enjoyed by every other municipality that I come in contact with. So I think to expect that that the council members are privy to all of this going on simply is not going to occur. The next piece that I would see is that, or I observed here, is that that the mayor receives correspondence from residents, and it's presumed that in fact it was intended for all of the council members and that they would like to see that. That's not my view on this, and I looked at the electronic or the communications policy. If you're a councillor and you're writing to somebody, it's copied to all of council as well as the CAO. There's no reference to the mayor doing that, and I would not propose to do that. I believe when a resident's writing to me on an issue, it's because they either know me or that they're who they want to deal with. I do recognize that there's also another piece in the electronic communication policy, is that members of council to staff is to be copied to all of the council as well as to the CAO. I don't consider that as, when I correspond with the CAO, that applies to me, because I don't see the CAO as actually being a staff. He is the CAO, so it's not otherwise mentioned. I think on this, there was also the piece about me writing to this resident without general council agreement. I think if I again look at the communications policy, It's, I think it's, and I quote, "In the interest of providing residents with timely responses," and I wrote the same within an hour and a half of when the resident wrote, "emails addressed to the majority of council may be responded to by the mayor prior to the council meeting. Such email responses must be copied to all of council," which it was, and to the CAO. "And it must not contradict current council policies." In this particular case, it was, and it's in your correspondence package, item R1, resident Linda Folster, and pretty much everything I mentioned to her is everything we discussed tonight. And I would also say, and we'll just conclude on that, that I get at times I get a significant volume of emails. My style is to max out the resident experience, is to respond to it as quickly as I can. I don't have anything more to say, but I will conclude by saying if I see anything from a resident that I think is of such value to our council members, I certainly would send it. That's all I have on this particular piece, and I'm happy to move on. Second. Councillor Abbott, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, I wasn't expecting, that was the discussion point you were talking about. I thought you were going to talk about the actual incidences, the actual resident concerns. But let me just comment on that. I do believe it is pretty obvious reading the first line of a letter whether a resident wants to talk to all of council or wants to talk to just the mayor. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Sure, there's plenty emails that you get that agree you are someone that wants to talk to their mayor. I also believe if we're discussing something in the council meeting and a resident writes something on that topic, I think all 5 people on council should have that information. I fail to understand why you think it's appropriate that the mayor should be privy to a lot more information than the rest of us are. We're trying to make the same decision, come to the same conclusion. It just makes no sense to me. So I still stand by that, and I think there could be more communication with the rest of council. I am not asking to see residents' complaints or residents' personal issues that are directly to the mayor. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. Not what I'm suggesting at all. So I'll just guess we all disagree on that.
Fair enough, thank you very much. The next topic is on the council piece, and that is Councillor Barmayer on the EV.
Yeah, just to provide a quick update, Pam and I have been working through pulling the actual grant application together. It looks relatively promising. A lot of the requirements align well with the way the grant's written. So that's where that's at.
Good, so we're bringing this baby home slowly but surely. Good, thank you very much. CFO, any comments? Nope, we're good, thank you very much.
It's on the IC agenda, isn't it?
Councillor Bain?
Or Thursday?
I think it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little slow to get the unmute button.
Yeah, so I imagine Councillor Barmer will probably get into more detail there and talk about next steps and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barmayer, and congratulations on how that's progressing. Next item up is the Emergency Services Report, which is the RCMP, which it looks like it's pretty modest in Lions Bay month kind of thing. I always personally look for the break-ins and stuff like that, and I'm happy to see none. I'll put forward the motion to receive this report. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Any discussion? There being none, I'll call a motion where it's received. All in favor, ayes. Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, which brings us to the new business piece, and this one is, I spoke to the chair of the events committee, and the topic of Canada Day came up today. And the issue was, under the current guidelines, we're at 50 people max for gathering, unless you correct me, CAO? Nope. Don't know where it's going to go, but I'm gonna guess it's not gonna get to a big number real fast. And candidate day is coming. So I think what the committee is thinking of doing, and this is still in the discussion phase amongst them, is that if there was a food truck here, that there might be a token given to the community members in celebration of Canada Day. Again, details a little vague. I'll take any more information that I can give back to them, but at this point, my guidance to them is listen to the public health officer. It's going to be tough to gather for any normal kind of Canada Day with 50 people. CAO, any comments?
Nope, not at this point.
Okay, on that one, then we'll go back. Next item, and this, I've called it Brunswick, and just kind of do the quick editorial that I'm looking for feedback and all of us to push this problem around. The siege of Brunswick, just as with, I think, Kelvin Grove continues, and I feel we're just not doing enough to support our residents. I think we've talked about fine increases and towing, and this is all good stuff. I think that issues of non-resident high speed continues to be an issue. I'd just like to push some ideas around, and I joked earlier about Councillor Cunliffe for their spike belt. But, I mean, are we at the point here where we might consider additional bylaw officers? Are we at the point of putting up temporary barriers for selected streets? Excuse me. I would appreciate some feedback from council on this and the CAO. I just feel so empathetic to these people. And you know, on Monday when it was getting warmer and sunnier, it was a matter of minutes before I knew the phone calls were going to start. No comments?
Would you like me to start?
Please.
So one of the things that was identified when Public Works Manager Jaffer brought his report on Lower Lions Bay and traffic calming was step one is establish what speeds people are actually doing. On a small residential street, sometimes the perception of speed can be tricky to actually estimate. 20 kilometers an hour might look really fast, and maybe it is too fast for that street. But I think that, you know, if we're going to talk about traffic calming measures for that neighborhood, then we need to look at the whole gamut, but we need to start with identifying speed. So in terms of following up on our purchase of the speed reader, the digital speed reader board that we're going ahead with through the ICBC grant, we're still at least 2 or 3 weeks away from getting that. But we're going to try and set up for this weekend, we're going to try and set up the old one that we borrowed from Bowen. It's a little glitchy and the battery goes quickly, but we'll see if we can get some data for starters, and maybe we can start on Friday with that.
And that's
in the weekend.
That's in Brunswick? You put it in Brunswick? That's going to Brunswick or Lions Bay Ave?
Brunswick.
Thank you.
And in terms of the fining and penalties, those are obviously going up. In terms of the towing, it's obviously very limited in terms of parking, even for those who have permits. There's not very many spots you can park down there. So it's pretty easy to identify anybody who's not parked appropriately. So they're going to get ticketed. And if it's clear signage and everything's a go, we'll tow them as well. in terms of the moving traffic, we'll look at some options for road narrowing with concrete barriers or something like that to slow traffic down. So it's, you've got to slow down to go through a pinch point, or let the car coming the opposite direction pass through. We'll look at different things that we can consider in terms of traffic calming for the neighborhood. In terms of temporary wooden barricades that were suggested for the top of the hill near the intersection, that to me is a super no-go. That would require residents themselves manning barricades. You could have public who are pissed off that somebody's not letting them drive on a public road, and bad things can happen, whether it's fisticuffs, whether it's screaming and yelling and obscenities, or whether somebody gets so upset that they drive their car through a barricade and injure or kill somebody. Those are all possibilities. I reached out to our insurers, our lawyer, and the RCMP this afternoon to discuss that kind of an idea. I didn't hear back yet from MIA or lawyers, but I did have a conversation with the RCMP, and he suggested that that was not a good idea, strongly recommended against doing it. That we were probably only going to deter the majority who would be compliant, but you're always going to have an agitated minority who's going to be confrontational. And he didn't recommend it. He talked about how even during doing blockades on the Squamish Valley Highway or the Squamish Valley Road during the evacuation they had because of the wildfire, they had all kinds of confrontational people who were ready to get into fisticuffs because they weren't being allowed to get through. So you do get agitated people. There's stories all over the place about those kinds of incidents, and I think that proceeding or condoning anything like that would put us in a very precarious legal position, and I don't recommend it at all. I don't think it's a wise thing to do. I think we need to explore other options and see what we can come up with, and that's what we intend to do.
Thank you very, very much, and I appreciate in this short time that since I phoned and we chatted about this, that you've done the exploration. It's a very sellable answer to the residents there, and I also like your response on the other traffic calming measures. If that could come forward by our next regular council meeting, would that be enough time for you?
I see a Public Works Manager nodding yes.
Yes? Shall we take that as yes?
Okay.
Then thank you very much on this topic. And as with the Kelvin Grovers, these communities are under siege, and we just need to help them out the best we can. Thank you. Okay, public questions, comments, and we've lost our public, so there is none. There we go. So, closed council meeting. Excuse me while I get a drink of water before I start coughing.
Correspondence. We skipped correspondence.
Oh, damn. Correspondence. Counselor Barmayer, you were quiet. You would have loved it.
Okay.
All right, you're on the clock here. Let's go.
Yeah, the first three are relatively straightforward. The Affordable Housing Project Canada is looking for us to, I guess, maybe have a conversation around tiny homes or alternative types of smaller and affordable housing. I don't know that there's any action directly there for us. The next is Sticks and Stones Cannabis requesting a letter of support for online payment and delivery to be available in BC. I don't know that that's our jurisdiction or that we want to get involved with that. I'm not sure if there are any strong opinions, but I would suggest that's just received. And the next is an appeal for some form of action, and Ruth speaks to it a bit further down in resident correspondence about wood fiber LNG's extension application. It sounds like a bit of a formality, and there's this concern that not enough communities in the area were consulted about this extension. So I have to defer possibly to Peter on this. I don't know if there's really anything we should be doing or can do. I mean, the date, it sounds like the date was today to appeal this. So I don't know if that ship has just kind of sailed. I don't know if there's anything we can do here, or if we should.
I think Ruth's ask is on page 168, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So what she requests is that we write to the project assessment officer and request that, request to be added back onto the list of working group members and be offered the opportunity to comment and explain that because of the delay, we should have been on the list, and we should be added back on and given an opportunity to respond. And the council provide her with an invitation to submit comments. She was the representative for Lions Bay from the get-go on this project. And finally, to request an extension to the deadline for response and comments. That ties into number 1, I think. So that's the ask, and I think, yeah, today was supposedly the date by which to provide a response, but the ask is that we seek an extension of that for the reasons given, and seek an opportunity to provide comments through Ruth. So ball's at council's court.
Well, Councillor.
Sorry, the rest of the material is there in Ruth's materials, as well as the ones from Tracy Saxby.
There you go. Councillor Barmere, your response?
But I think it's a reasonable request to be consulted on something that's potentially impactful. So
Okay.
that would be my position.
There we go. Councillor Bain?
I think I would suggest that we continue with Ruth as our representative, because she's so knowledgeable about the situation and all the facts and details, and I think she's represented us well in the past. So if she's willing to take it on, I would encourage that.
There you go. Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe?
I have to concur with Councillor Bain and Councillor Barnier. I think Ruth's the person for the job, and I do think that we should have been consulted.
All right, thank you then. I think, okay, the two of you can put your hands down. Feeling the will of the council then for item G3, and we'll double up on R2, then I will deal with that as quickly as I can. All right, Councillor Barmere, keep going through the resident correspondence.
Okay, so R1 you've responded to, so that's just for information for us.
Yeah, it's a done deal.
Okay, so we've discussed this one. R3, I'm not really sure if it's just received. Have you reached out?
I have spoken to Mrs. Mitchell, and I will write to her.
R4 is Mr. Monfard, who's expressing disappointment that the cell tower didn't go through. R5 and R6 are similar, and they have to do with a Facebook thread about how I guess a bit of a joke our parking enforcement and fines are, and I guess we would have addressed that today.
I'll be happy to write to those two.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And too bad only another month and a half, 2 months of this for you still. There you go. Thank you very much, Councillor Barmere. And that does bring us through to closing the meeting. And the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of public are the Curly Stewart Memorial Trust Fund applications and 35 Kelvin Grove Way listing agreement. And the motion is that the council considers the disclosure of item 13B in open meeting could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and that the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections, and they are there on your agenda, which is number 91, B, E, N, and number 92B. And if put forward, that is the motion I put forward. Can I have concurrence by a seconder to confirm? Thank you. All in favor of the proposed in-camera agenda, please ayes yes, nays opposed.
Aye.
Ayes.
Aye.
Ayes have it. And thank you. And for those who are not here but shouldn't be here, you are now closed out, and we will, we're closing and rejoining, Carla? Is that right?
Yeah, on a different link.
Okay, so we'll say goodbye and into the open. You ready, Carla? Okay, thank you. Here we are at 10:55. Council's going back into the open session, and I report out on behalf of council the following: that Kim Taylor retains an exclusive listing of the Kelvin Grove lot owned by the village, with the listing to remain at $785,000. Nothing else to report out. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor? Good. We're done. Thank you. Carla, hit the kill switch.